Hi, this is Kathy Goodwin. And the number one reason that people call me and hire me to talk about their careers is related to performance reviews. Sometimes people get a review that they believe is bad. Sometimes they get a review that is simply unexpected. They expected one thing and they got another, whether it's a lot better or a lot worse. So today we're going to talk about what happens when you believe your review is not what you wanted, it's below what you expected, it's even a bad review. And we'll talk about some ways you can handle it. First, I make a big disclaimer. This is absolutely not legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I am not any kind of an attorney. I am not even a paralegal or a legal assistant. What I focus on when I work with clients is the social, cultural, and organizational components of careers. And that's how we talk about your career strategy, not your legal strategy, although sometimes I will recommend, sometimes quite forcefully, that you seek legal counsel because it may be in your best interest, even if you never end up hiring a lawyer to work for you, to at least understand your options. I also want to emphasize that your performance review should be kept strictly quiet. I do not recommend that you discuss your review with your colleagues. If you talk to your boss or your human resource department, be aware that your words are going to be weighed carefully and could be used against you in the future. You may have started out with a so-so review, and I've seen people, by the time they get done discussing it, things spiral in a rapidly downward direction. So I recommend not discussing it with your colleagues. Be very careful when talking to your boss and HR. Find people outside your organization, people you can confide in, people you trust, who are not connected to the company, who will see things dispassionately. Maybe they were in the company once or in the industry, but for now they have no possible way to influence the outcome of your performance review, and they're objective. Your family and friends care for you. They're hardly going to be objective, but also your family and friends are special. And when you talk about reviews a lot of times they can be alienated because it seems very negative and they don't understand what happened. Often we're in families that come from very different kinds of backgrounds and they don't understand the implications. They think maybe you did something, or maybe you're just such an innocent person trapped in a hopeless situation, when the truth is usually somewhere in between. So I would recommend be very careful about who you talk to. Step number one is to take a look at your organization's culture. What are the unwritten rules and customs? When you do this, you'll get a different perspective on the review itself, whether it really is bad. It may actually be good in your current organization. For example, I once worked for an organization a long time ago that believed that everyone who was new should be given horrendous reviews. They thought it would be good for people. Now, I don't know whether they were just covering their butts in case someone messed up and they wanted to get rid of them. They'd have something documented so they could fire people early on in their careers. I don't know if they were just stupid or if it was something that had just started as a tradition, like an old boy type hazing a long time ago. I know they lost a lot of good people and people were puzzled. But the truth is, if you discover you're in one of those organizations, it's important to understand, because you don't need to take your review personally. In fact, I knew someone in that organization who got at one point I got put on probation and had all kinds of negative feedback thrown at him, and he survived. He went on to have a really outstanding job in the organization, and probably is still there doing very, very well. So in some cultures you can recover. In fact, in some cultures you're expected to ignore the review and just soldier on. And others you are expected to put up a fight. They will respect you more if you speak up. And in other cultures, even a whisper that you're anything less than perfect means you better get out of there. So it's really important to understand what the culture is. How did this review come about? What is the purpose? What are the likely outcomes in your organization? Step two is, what do you really want? I'll give you an example. I had a client who got a really, really negative performance review. She should have called me a year earlier, because there was a previous review a year earlier, and that was when the best time to deal with these reviews is the first hint of something negative. get an objective outside opinion, because when things start to escalate, it gets harder and harder to keep your options open. So she had just ignored the review. In fact, she got really depressed and frustrated and started doing things that did not advance her case. By the time she came to me, things were pretty grim. So I said, okay, what do you want? She said, well, I want out of corporate life. I want to be an artist. I want to move to another state. I want totally out of what I'm doing. So we did not spend a lot of time trying to rehabilitate her reputation in the company. We spent time figuring out, because she'd been there a long time, could she get some kind of severance package? And maybe this was an occasion for a lawyer. We talked about maybe what her opportunities could be, with given her experience, to get a job that would allow her to begin to work as an artist. Maybe if she wanted to go to art school, she could use some of her skills to get on the faculty or the staff of an art school, so she would get free tuition. There's all kinds of things you can do once you know what you really want. On the other hand, suppose she had said, I like my job, I want to stay. Then we would have looked at very different kinds of opportunities, such as, could she undo this situation? Could she tough it out and maybe turn things around? If she wanted to stay within the company, that's a very viable option for many people. Could she transfer within the company? A lot of times there are ways to do that, and we could almost always come up with a really creative solution, but we have to think about what you really want. And when you're in a state of shock, it may take a little time to calm down and ask this question. And again, I recommend talking to someone outside the organization. Then step 3 is, what are your options? Almost always you have a lot more options and opportunities than you realize. If you first get any review that's negative, you could be in a state of shock. Many people that I work with are high achievers. In fact, almost everyone I work with is a high achiever. They've had good grades in school. Many have advanced degrees, or they started their own companies, or they did something extraordinary. And this is the first time that something negative is happening. So of course it's a shock. Our brains are hardwired to go into shock when we get this kind of feedback. It takes time to go through and identify just what you can do. Most people start out by saying, okay, all I can do is respond to the review or do nothing. There are tons of things you can do besides that. And that's one of the things we spend time exploring during any consultation. So I want to thank you for joining me, and let me just suggest some ways if you'd like to explore further working with me. There are several ways that I can help. I have a website, Midlife Career Strategy, and you'll find my blog, which is filled with information that anyone can access. I also have an ebook especially devoted to dealing with performance reviews, and I've got the link here. Additionally, I work with clients in consultations, one-to-one. This is really helpful, because what I'm hearing from clients is not only do we talk about the review, but we get into a discussion of how to orient your career and how to use your performance review, no matter what it looks like, to help you reach the next stage of your career and get to where you really want to be. This is a perspective that I think is very hard to get from certainly someone in the company who you're not supposed to talk to anyway, or but even a family member or a good friend. You almost always need someone who is objective, who can see things outside and kind of look at things from experience and say, yes, this is, kind of what's going on. A lot of times I find when you do that, people emerge from reviews happy. It's like saying, wow, this is really a good opportunity. I've had so many people email me or call me and say, thanks for the consultation. I am within the same company, but I didn't know I could do this. It never occurred to me how to brush up my resume within the company and find a position that's a better position with a boss who really respects me, and my career is taking off. So this opportunity, when you get a negative review or a surprising review, this is really something to think of as an opportunity to move in the direction you want. It's a vehicle for getting you where you want to go. It's not an obstacle and not something to get torn apart over. So thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you on a future video and meeting with you in a consultation when you're ready to talk about your next career moves. Thanks again, and have a wonderful rest of the day.